You know that moment when you realize your marriage wasn't falling apart. It already had a whole other address? My name is Spencer, and I was waiting for the elevator at University Hospital in Austin when I saw my husband Joel walking out of the gynecology wing with a pregnant woman. Not just any pregnant woman, a very pregnant woman who was glowing in that nauseating way that screams second trimester bliss. And Joel? Joel looked like he'd just won the lottery and forgotten to tell his current wife about the ticket. I stepped into that elevator like I was walking into a board meeting. Calm, collected, wearing my best poker face. Joel's expression went from smug satisfaction to pure existential terror in approximately 2.5 seconds. The man literally turned the color of old oatmeal. Morgan, because of course her name was Morgan, looked confused, glancing between us like she'd just walked into the wrong movie theater. I got off on the next floor without saying a single word, left him standing there, frozen like a deer in headlights, while Morgan probably wondered why her devoted boyfriend suddenly looked like he was about to meet his maker. Here's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. It's not actually surprising when it happens. It's more like finally finding the receipt for something you've been paying for all along. I'd known something was off for months. The late-night client calls that required him to step outside. The suddenly password-protected phone. The way he'd started going to the gym at 5 in the morning. Joel, who previously thought a walk to the mailbox counted as cardio. And my personal favorite, the mysterious charges to the Lakeside Inn, a place I'd never been, but apparently he'd become a frequent patron of their hourly rate special. But I'm not the type to make accusations without evidence. I'm a financial analyst at Sterling Capital Management. At 34, I'd spent 5 years building my career analyzing investment portfolios and catching discrepancies that CEOs tried to hide. I don't do feelings and hunches. I do data, numbers, cold, hard facts that hold up in court. So 3 weeks before that elevator incident, I'd hired Hank Bradford, a private investigator who operates out of a dingy office in Travis County, but has a reputation for being thorough as an IRS audit. I'd found him through a colleague whose husband had tried to hide assets during their divorce. Hank had found a vacation property in Galveston, a boat in Corpus Christi, and a girlfriend in San Antonio. The man was basically a human metal detector for terrible husbands. I paid him $3,000 up front, told him I needed everything. Photos, financial records, communication logs, the works. Hank looked at me with those tired detective eyes and said, "Ma'am, in my experience, when a wife hires me, she already knows the answer. She just needs the proof." He wasn't wrong. Hank delivered his report 2 days before the elevator incident. It was a masterpiece of investigative work, 73 pages of Joel's double life, complete with timestamps, photographs, and bank statements that showed regular transfers to an account I'd never heard of. There were photos of Joel and Morgan having brunch at Magnolia Cafe, holding hands at Zilker Park, and entering that Lakeside Inn I mentioned. 16 times. Hank had even recovered deleted WhatsApp messages where Joel referred to me as the obstacle and Morgan as his future. That future, according to what Hank had pieced together from recovered WhatsApp messages and Morgan's embarrassingly public social media presence, she'd been documenting every ultrasound on Instagram, was currently 6 months along. A boy. They'd already picked out a name. Carter. Mentioned repeatedly in their texts. They had a Pinterest board for the nursery that Morgan had helpfully made public, complete with nautical themes and personalized wall art. The day I got Hank's report, I sat in my car in the Sterling Capital parking garage for 45 minutes, reading through every page. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I did what I always do. I made a plan. First call. Mason Caldwell, the best divorce attorney in Austin. The man charges $400 an hour, and he's worth every penny. I'd seen him eviscerate a cheating spouse in a colleague's divorce, left the guy with his car, his golf clubs, and a studio apartment in Round Rock. Mason agreed to see me that afternoon. Second call, my bank. I withdrew half of everything in our joint accounts and opened a new account at a different bank. Community property state or not, I wasn't about to let Joel drain our savings to fund his new family's diaper budget. Third call, a locksmith, scheduled for the following Monday. That Sunday night, after the elevator encounter, after I'd had 24 hours to let it really sink in, I called Atlas Moving Company. Told them I needed 2 strong guys and a truck. They arrived at 7 a.m. Monday morning. By noon, every single item that belonged to Joel was packed in boxes and garbage bags, stacked neatly in our garage. His Harvard Business School diploma that I'd paid to frame. The tie collection I'd organized by color. That ridiculous putter he'd bought after watching one too many PGA tournaments. The electric toothbrush I'd given him for our anniversary. All of it. Gone from my house. I printed out my favorite photos from Hank's report. Joel and Morgan at Central Market, sharing a basket of organic produce like they were auditioning for a farmer's market commercial. Joel kissing her forehead outside the ultrasound clinic. Morgan's hand on her belly while Joel looked at her like she'd hung the moon. A look I hadn't seen directed at me in approximately 3 years. I laid those photos on top of his largest suitcase, added Mason Caldwell's business card, wrote on a post-it note, "Any questions? Ask him. Don't contact me." The locksmith arrived at 2 p.m. By 2:30, Joel's keys no longer worked on my house. I'd texted him once that afternoon. "Your belongings are in the garage. Locks changed. Divorce papers being filed Wednesday. Do not contact me directly. All communication goes through my attorney." He called 63 times that evening. 63. I know because I was tracking it like a science experiment. He sent 47 text messages ranging from, "Baby, please let me explain," to, "You're overreacting," to, "You can't just kick me out of my own house." That last one was particularly amusing considering my name was the only one on the deed, a detail he'd apparently forgotten when he'd been too busy planning nursery themes. He showed up at the house around 8 p.m. I watched from the upstairs window as he discovered his personal effects piled in the garage like a yard sale nobody wanted to attend. He rang the doorbell, banged on the door, yelled my name like we were in some dramatic Netflix series. I poured myself a glass of the Pinot Noir he'd been saving for a special occasion and didn't answer. By 9 p.m., he was gone. His car loaded with boxes, his tail between his legs, probably heading to Morgan's place to explain why his wife had suddenly discovered his entire secret life. That night, I slept better than I had in 6 months. No waking up at 3 a.m. to check his phone. No knot in my stomach. No wondering if I was crazy for being suspicious. Just me, my dignity, and the absolute certainty that sometimes karma doesn't wait for the afterlife. Sometimes it arrives in a hospital elevator in Austin, Texas, on a random Tuesday afternoon. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Joel's mother, Patricia. Because apparently, in Joel's version of events, I was the villain in this little soap opera. The woman who'd spent 6 years telling me I seasoned chicken wrong and folded towels incorrectly was now my personal judge and jury. I let it go to voicemail. Patricia's voice came through with that particular blend of southern sweetness and northern passive aggression that only a woman from Dallas can achieve. "Spencer, honey, Joel is absolutely beside himself. He says there's been a terrible misunderstanding. You know how men are, they make mistakes, but throwing his things out like common trash, that's just not how we handle things in this family. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults." Right. Because adulting definitely includes defending your son's 6-month affair and secret pregnancy. The woman had clearly missed that chapter in her etiquette handbook. I deleted it without responding. Patricia had never liked me anyway. I wasn't from Texas. I'd moved to Austin from Boston 5 years ago for the Sterling Capital job. I didn't say y'all, naturally. I ordered my barbecue with coleslaw instead of potato salad. Basically, I was a walking disappointment to her vision of Southern womanhood. Wednesday morning, Mason filed the divorce papers. By Wednesday afternoon, Joel had been officially served at his office at Precision Analytics, the consulting firm where he pretended to be a model employee. Mason called me with an update, barely containing his amusement. "He tried to refuse the papers," Mason said. "Told the process server there must be some mistake." The guy had to explain to him 3 times that yes, his wife really was divorcing him, and no, this wasn't negotiable. "Did he cry?" I asked, organizing files at my desk. The process server said he turned red and started sweating profusely. Close enough. I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered the Pinterest board and got over it real quick. By Thursday, the office gossip mill at Precision Analytics was apparently working overtime. Joel's colleague, Marcus, who I'd met exactly twice at company events, called me out of the blue. This is how desperate Joel had become, sending his work friends to plead his case. "Spencer, hey, it's Marcus. From Joel's office? Listen, Joel asked me to reach out." "Marcus, I'm going to stop you right there," I said, not looking up from my spreadsheet. "Joel is about to be my ex-husband, emphasis on ex. Whatever sob story he told you is missing some crucial details, like the pregnant girlfriend, and the 6-month affair, and the secret apartment. Should I continue?" Silence. Then, "He said you were having trust issues." Trust issues. I laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. "Yes, Marcus, I do have trust issues. Specifically, I have issues trusting men who maintain entire second families while their wives pay the mortgage. Funny how that works." Marcus mumbled something about staying out of it and hung up. I added his number to my blocked list. I was building quite the collection. Friday brought a new development. Morgan reached out. She'd apparently gotten my number from Joel's phone, which should have been my first clue about her respect for boundaries. The text arrived while I was in a meeting with clients. "Hi, Spencer. This is Morgan. I think we need to talk. There are things you don't understand about Joel and me. Can we meet for coffee?" I stared at that text for a solid 30 seconds. The audacity. The sheer, unfiltered audacity of this woman. She wanted to meet for coffee. Probably at some cute place in South Congress where we could discuss her pregnancy over overpriced lattes, while she explained how she and my husband had fallen in love, and it was nobody's fault. I typed back, "Morgan, the only thing I need to understand is that you're welcome to him. Congratulations on your pregnancy. I hope Carter inherits his father's ability to juggle multiple lives. Sounds like a useful skill in your family. Do not contact me again. Block. Delete. Move on." But Morgan wasn't done. Oh no. Saturday morning, she showed up at my house. Joel had obviously given her our address. Actually showed up. Rang my doorbell at 9 a.m. like we were neighbors borrowing sugar. I opened the door in my pajamas, coffee in hand, looking at her very pregnant self standing on my porch with what I can only describe as audacious determination. "We need to talk," she said, her hand protectively on her belly like I was going to challenge her to a duel. "No, we really don't," I replied, already closing the door. "Joel loves me," she blurted out. "He's been unhappy for years. You two were basically roommates. He told me everything." I paused, opened the door a little wider. "Everything? Did he tell you about the beach house in Port Aransas we were planning to buy this summer? The one I've been saving for? Or how about the couple's therapy sessions I'd been begging him to attend? No? Interesting." Morgan's confidence flickered. "He said you refused therapy." "Morgan, I literally sent him a list of 6 therapists covered by our insurance. He said he was too busy with work. Apparently, by work, he meant you." I took a sip of coffee. "Look, I'm going to be generous here since you're clearly operating with limited information. Joel is a liar. He lied to me for 6 months. He's lying to you right now. And when this whole thing blows up, and it will, he'll probably lie to the next woman too. But that's your problem now, not mine. You're just bitter because he chose me," she shot back, her voice rising. I laughed. Actually laughed. "Honey, he didn't choose you. He chose convenience. You were the exciting secret, the escape from reality. But now reality showed up in a hospital elevator and suddenly you're not so exciting anymore. Give it 6 months. He'll be telling the next woman that you two are basically roommates." Her face went pale. I'd hit a nerve. Good. "Now, I have a Pilates class at 10 and you're on private property. Leave. Don't come back. And tell Joel that if he sends anyone else to my house, I'm filing a restraining order. My attorney would love the billable hours." I closed the door, locked it, went back to my coffee like I hadn't just verbally dismantled my husband's pregnant mistress before breakfast. Sunday was Mother's Day. The universe apparently has a sense of irony. Patricia sent me a group text, because of course she did, that included me, Joel, his sister Amber, and Joel's brother Keith. The text read, "Family brunch at Threadgill's at 11. Everyone is expected to attend. We need to discuss this situation like mature adults. I replied to the group, Patricia, I'm no longer family. Discuss with your son why his situation involves a woman named Morgan who's 6 months pregnant. I'm spending Mother's Day with my actual mother in Boston. Best wishes. Then I left the group chat, blocked all their numbers, and booked a flight to Boston for the following weekend. Amber texted me privately 5 minutes later. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Joel's a complete idiot. At least someone in that family had sense. I told her I appreciated it, but needed space from anything Joel-related. She understood. Monday morning, I walked into Sterling Capital like nothing had happened. My colleague Jennifer took one look at me and asked if I was okay. Never better, I said, and I meant it. I just cleared out about 200 pounds of dead weight. I'm practically floating. She laughed. Then she bought me lunch at Torchy's Tacos, and we spent an hour discussing my newfound freedom over queso and margaritas. Joel, meanwhile, was apparently having a breakdown at Precision Analytics. Marcus, who'd clearly learned nothing from our last conversation, texted to say Joel had locked himself in the bathroom crying during a client meeting. I sent back a gif of someone playing the world's smallest violin. Petty? Absolutely. Satisfying? You have no idea. 2 weeks after the Mother's Day disaster, I was organizing financial documents for Mason when I found something that made my analytical brain light up like a Christmas tree. Irregularities in our joint investment account. Joel had always handled our investments. Big mistake on my part. One I was now paying attention to. I'd been so focused on my career, climbing the ladder at Sterling Capital, that I'd let him manage our personal portfolio. He was in consulting, dealt with numbers, seemed competent enough. Clearly, I'd confused competence with honesty. I pulled up our Vanguard account on my laptop, started tracing transactions going back 18 months. What I found was beautiful in its audacity. Joel had been systematically moving money, our money, into accounts I didn't have access to. Small amounts at first. 500 here, 1,000 there. Then larger chunks. 5,000, 10,000. Over 18 months, he'd siphoned off nearly $87,000. I sat back in my chair, coffee going cold, and just stared at the screen. This wasn't just infidelity. This was financial fraud. And I had documentation of every single transfer. I called Mason immediately. I need you to listen very carefully, I said, already screenshotting every transaction. Joel's been moving money out of our joint accounts for 18 months. I have records of $87,000 transferred to accounts in his name only. Mason went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then, Spencer, you beautiful, brilliant woman. Email me everything right now. This changes the entire divorce proceeding. How? Texas is a community property state. That money is half yours. He's been hiding marital assets. This isn't just grounds for divorce. This is grounds for me to absolutely eviscerate him in court. I can pursue penalties, attorney fees, maybe even fraud charges if you want to go nuclear. How nuclear are we talking? Chernobyl levels. But first, I need you to do something for me. Don't tell anyone about this. Not your friends, not your mother, absolutely not Joel. We're going to let him think he's safe. Let him believe you only know about Morgan. I smiled. You're devious. I like it. I'm expensive and devious. That's why you hired me. That afternoon, I went full forensic accountant on our finances. This was my territory. I'd spent 5 years analyzing corporate investments, catching discrepancies that CEOs tried to hide. Joel had clearly forgotten he was married to someone who finds financial patterns the way bloodhounds find missing persons. I discovered he'd opened an investment account at Marcus by Goldman Sachs under a business name, JM Consulting LLC. Clever. He'd registered it using his middle name, Marcus, which explained why his colleague Marcus had seemed so uncomfortable during that phone call. Poor guy probably had no idea Joel had stolen his name for shady business dealings. The LLC was registered in Delaware, classic move for people trying to hide assets. But Joel had made one critical mistake. He'd used our home address as the business mailing address. Every quarterly statement came to our house. He'd just been intercepting the mail before I saw it. I called the post office. Put in a forwarding request for any mail addressed to JM Consulting LLC to come to my new P.O. box instead. It would take effect in 3 business days. Then I did something that felt absolutely delicious. I signed up for credit monitoring on both our names. Within hours, I had access to every account, every loan, every financial move Joel had made. There was a car loan I didn't know about, a BMW 5 Series, registered to his name only. I'd bet my entire 401k that Morgan was driving it. I sent everything to Mason. He called me back within the hour, practically giddy. Spencer, this is a goldmine. I've handled 300 divorces. This is top-tier stupidity on his part. He's hidden assets, committed fraud, and documented everything like he was keeping receipts for a tax write-off. So what's our move? We file an emergency motion to freeze all his accounts. We go after the hidden money, the car, anything he's purchased with marital funds. And here's the best part. With this level of deception, I can argue for you to get a larger share of everything. Not just 50-50. We're talking 60-40, maybe 70-30 in your favor. When? I'll have the motion filed by Monday morning. He won't know what hit him. I spent that weekend in Boston with my mother, who'd always had a sixth sense about Joel. Over brunch at the Friendly Toast in Cambridge, she just looked at me and said, "You seem lighter." "I found out he's been stealing from me for 18 months, I said, cutting into my French toast. My mother, retired tax attorney, toughest woman I know, smiled. "Good. That means you get to destroy him legally. Much more satisfying than just emotionally." "Mom, that's kind of dark." "Sweetie, I raised you to be smart, not nice. There's a difference." She sipped her mimosa. "How much did he take?" 87,000 so far. Probably more I haven't found yet. In that case, take him for everything. House, retirement accounts, his dignity. Leave him with the pregnant girlfriend and debt. That's justice. I loved my mother. Monday morning, Mason filed the emergency motion. By Monday afternoon, Joel's accounts were frozen. Mason called me with an update around 3 p.m. His attorney just called me. Joel's having what I can only describe as a complete meltdown. Apparently, he'd just written Morgan a check for $15,000 for baby furniture, and it bounced. The bank notified him his accounts are locked pending court review. I was drinking coffee at my desk. I actually snorted into the cup. 15,000? For baby furniture? Rich people's babies are us, I assume. Anyway, his attorney is demanding an emergency hearing. Wants to unfreeze the accounts. I told him we have documentation of fraud and asset hiding, and if they want to push this, we're happy to pursue criminal charges. What did he say? Nothing for about 30 seconds. Then he asked if we'd be willing to mediate. Meaning? Meaning Joel's attorney knows his client is screwed. Mediation is lawyer speak for please don't destroy my client in open court where it becomes public record. I thought about it. About Morgan waiting for baby furniture that wasn't coming. About Joel's accounts frozen, unable to access his own stolen money. About Patricia probably calling him every hour asking what was happening. Tell them we'll consider mediation, I said. But our opening position is 70-30 split of all assets, including the hidden accounts. Plus he pays all attorney fees. Mine and his. Spencer, you're my favorite client this year. Mason, I'm your most expensive client this year. There's a difference. He laughed. Touché. That evening, Jennifer and I went to Justine's Brasserie for dinner. She'd been my sounding board through this entire mess, and I owed her approximately 17 dinners and unlimited wine. So, let me get this straight, she said, working on her second glass of Sancerre. He cheated on you, got another woman pregnant, and was stealing from you the entire time? Correct. And now his accounts are frozen. The baby furniture bounced, and you're about to take him for everything he's worth? Also correct. Jennifer raised her glass. I want to be you when I grow up. Jen, you're 36. My point stands. We clinked glasses. Around us, Justine's was filled with couples on date nights, friends celebrating promotions, the normal rhythm of Austin nightlife. I felt more myself than I had in years. No anxiety about where Joel really was. No checking my phone constantly. No pretending everything was fine. Just me, my best friend, overpriced French wine, and the absolute certainty that Joel had messed with the wrong financial analyst. Mason texted around 9 p.m. Joel's attorney wants to meet Thursday morning. Bring your calculator. This is going to be fun. I texted back. I'll bring my spreadsheet. It's more devastating. Thursday morning couldn't come fast enough. I'd spent 3 evenings preparing a complete financial breakdown. Every asset, every debt, every penny Joel had hidden or spent. I'd cross-referenced credit card statements with his calendar, tracked cash withdrawals against his work trip schedule, and created a timeline that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. Joel thought he'd married someone who wouldn't notice, who wouldn't care, who would just accept whatever story he sold. He'd actually married someone who could spot a discrepancy from 3 fiscal years ago and trace it through 6 shell companies. His loss. My gain. Literally. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of crisp Austin weather that makes you believe good things are about to happen. I wore my navy Tahari suit, the one I'd worn when I'd closed the Westfield Capital deal last year. Power suit for a power move. Mason's office was in a renovated building on West 6th Street, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows. I arrived 15 minutes early with my leather portfolio containing 37 pages of documented fraud, organized by date, account, and level of audacity. Joel showed up 10 minutes late with his attorney, Richard Pemberton, a partner at Hughes & Associates who charged almost as much as Mason, but had half the reputation. Joel looked like he hadn't slept in days. Good. His shirt was wrinkled. His tie was crooked. The man who'd once spent 20 minutes choosing between 2 identical blue ties now looked like he'd gotten dressed in the dark. He wouldn't meet my eyes. We sat on opposite sides of Mason's conference table. Mason in his element, looking like he was about to enjoy his favorite meal. Richard looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Joel staring at the table like it held the secrets of the universe. And me, calm as a lake on a windless day. Gentlemen, Mason began, sliding copies of my financial analysis across the table. Let's discuss the creative accounting my client's husband has been doing for the past 18 months. Richard flipped through the first few pages. His expression went from professional neutrality to visible concern in about 30 seconds. These are joint accounts. My client has every right. Your client, Mason interrupted smoothly, opened a business LLC using a false name, transferred marital assets into accounts his wife had no knowledge of or access to, and failed to disclose these accounts during the preliminary divorce filing. That's not creative accounting. That's fraud. Joel finally spoke, his voice rough. Spencer, come on. That money was for our future. For investments? Joel. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. You bought your pregnant girlfriend a BMW with our money. You wrote her a $15,000 check for baby furniture. You opened accounts in Delaware to hide assets. Don't insult my intelligence by calling it investment strategy. He flinched. Actually flinched. My client is prepared to be reasonable, Richard said, which is lawyer speak for, we have no leverage and we know it. We'd like to propose a standard 50-50 division of assets, with Mr. O. Hartford retaining the investment accounts he established. Mason laughed. Actually laughed. Richard, I've known you for 12 years. You're better than this. Your client committed financial fraud. He hid $87,000. He purchased assets with marital funds and titled them in his name only. If we go to court, Judge Morrison will hand him his head on a platter. You know this. Richard looked at Joel, who was now studying his hands like they were fascinating artifacts. What are you proposing? Richard asked quietly. I opened my portfolio, slid my own document across the table. 70-30 split of all marital assets in my favor. This includes the house, which is already titled in my name, but was purchased with joint funds, so I'll pay Joel his 30% equity. All retirement accounts divided 70-30. The $87,000 in hidden accounts returned to me in full. That's not negotiable. The BMW either returned or Joel pays me half its value, and Joel pays all attorney fees for both sides. That's absurd, Joel said, finally looking up. You can't just take everything. I'm not taking everything, I said calmly. I'm taking what's fair, given that you committed fraud. Would you prefer I pursue criminal charges? Because Mason assures me that's an option. Richard put his hand on Joel's arm. The universal attorney gesture for, shut up before you make this worse. The house alone is worth $400,000, Richard said. If you're keeping it and paying 30% equity, that's $120,000 to my client, which conveniently covers the $87,000 he stole, plus some attorney fees, Mason interjected. See how the math works out? Almost like my client planned it that way. I had planned it that way. Exactly that way. The house equity would essentially force Joel to break even after returning the stolen money. He'd walk away with almost nothing after 18 months of theft. Richard looked at his notes, at Joel, at the financial documents. I could see him calculating odds, running scenarios, trying to find an angle. He wouldn't find one. I'd closed every loophole. We need time to consider, Richard began. You have until 5 p.m. today, Mason said cheerfully. After that, we file motions with the court, request a full financial disclosure hearing, and I contact the Travis County District Attorney about the fraud charges. Your client's accounts stay frozen until this is resolved, which in court could take 6 to 8 months. Joel's face went white. I can't wait 6 months. I have expenses. The baby's coming in 3 months? Should have thought about that before you started embezzling from your wife, Mason said. His voice was pleasant. His eyes were not. The room went silent. Joel looked at Richard. Richard looked at his legal pad. Mason looked at me. I looked at Joel, really looked at him, and saw a man who genuinely believed he wouldn't get caught, that I was too busy, too trusting, too invested in our life to notice. He'd confused my kindness for weakness, my trust for stupidity, my love for blindness. Classic mistake. We'll need to discuss this privately, Richard finally said. Mason gestured to the door. Conference room down the hall is available. Take your time. Well, take 30 minutes. I have another client at 11. They left. The door closed. Mason turned to me with a grin that could only be described as predatory. You did good, he said. That financial breakdown was poetry. The way you traced the BMW purchase to the exact day he told you he was at that conference in Dallas? Chef's kiss. He was actually test driving cars while I was home doing his laundry. Seemed worth documenting. The detail about him using the home address for the LLC statements was brilliant. Shows intent to deceive. He always did grab the mail before I got home. I thought he was being helpful. Turns out he was just covering his tracks poorly. 23 minutes later, they came back. Joel looked defeated. Richard looked resigned. We accept your terms, Richard said flatly. 70-30 split. 87,000 returned in full. Joel pays all attorney fees. He keeps the BMW but pays you half its current value, $18,000. The retirement accounts are divided as proposed. And the mediation agreement includes a clause that Joel doesn't contest the divorce or drag out proceedings, Mason added, sliding a document forward. We finalize this in 30 days. Richard nodded. Joel said nothing. I stood up, extended my hand to Richard. Pleasure doing business with you. Then I looked at Joel. Really looked at him. The man I'd spent 6 years with, who I'd supported through his career changes, who I'd trusted with our future. Joel, I said quietly, I hope Morgan appreciates what you gave up for her, because it wasn't just me. It was your integrity, your financial security, and any chance of us having an amicable separation. You chose deception over honesty, theft over conversation. You didn't just lose a wife. You lost a partner who would have helped you through anything if you'd just been honest. His eyes were wet. I didn't care. Sign the papers, move on, and maybe next time don't steal from someone who analyzes financial fraud for a living. I walked out of that conference room feeling 10 pounds lighter. Mason caught up with me at the elevator. That was the most professionally savage thing I've witnessed in 12 years of practice. I learned from the best. Your mother, my mother. The paperwork was finalized 3 weeks later. Joel transferred the $87,000 back into my account, paid my attorney fees, $23,000, paid his own attorney fees, $18,000, paid me $18,000 for half the BMW's value. After receiving $120,000 from the house equity and $68,000 from his share of retirement accounts, minus the $146,000 he had to pay out in returned funds, attorney fees, and the BMW settlement, he walked away from our 6-year marriage with roughly $42,000 and a pregnant girlfriend who was probably just realizing she'd hooked up with a man who was now essentially broke. I kept the house, kept my retirement account mostly intact, kept my dignity, and gained a really excellent story about why you should always marry someone too stupid to hide money from a financial analyst. The BMW detail was my favorite part. Mason had found the purchase records. Joel bought it 2 days before Valentine's Day. The same Valentine's Day he'd told me he was too busy for dinner because of a critical client deadline. He'd been at the BMW dealership buying Morgan her push present 6 months early. You genuinely cannot make this stuff up. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was sitting on my back porch, my porch, on my house, that I'd kept, drinking coffee and watching the Austin sunrise when Jennifer texted me, "Joel's engagement to Morgan is off. Heard it from Marcus. Thought you'd enjoy your morning coffee with that information." I did enjoy it, immensely. Apparently, Morgan had done the math. A broke consultant with a newborn, minimal savings, and a recent history of fraud wasn't exactly the fairy tale she'd signed up for. She'd moved back to San Antonio to live with her parents. Joel was paying child support, court-ordered naturally, and living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Pflugerville, which is the Austin equivalent of moving back in with your parents but with rent. The universe has a sense of humor after all. Life had settled into something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Actual, genuine peace. I'd gotten a promotion at Sterling Capital, senior financial analyst, corner office, 15% raise. Turns out when you're not spending emotional energy managing a failing marriage, you have a lot more bandwidth for crushing it professionally. I'd renovated the master bathroom, ripped out the tile Joel had chosen, gray and boring like his personality, and installed this gorgeous marble with gold fixtures. Every morning I brushed my teeth and thought about how he'd hate it. Petty? Sure. Satisfying? Absolutely. Jennifer and I had started a monthly tradition. First Friday of every month, we'd try a new restaurant in Austin and rate it based on ambiance, food quality, and whether we'd take a first date there. So far, Uchi was winning. Joel had always said sushi was too expensive. Turns out sushi tastes better when you're not subsidizing someone else's secret family. My mother visited in October. We went to Franklin Barbecue, waited in the legendary line, and she said something I'll never forget. "You know what I'm proudest of? Not that you left him. That was obvious. But that you made him pay for underestimating you. That's the part I'm proud of." Coming from a woman who'd spent 40 years in tax law making rich people cry, that was high praise. I'd run into Patricia exactly once, at Whole Foods on Lamar. She'd seen me, made direct eye contact, and turned her cart around so fast she nearly took out a display of organic kombucha. I'd wanted to tell her that her son was living in Pflugerville with furniture from IKEA, but I figured her knowing I was thriving while her son was struggling was punishment enough. Sometimes the best revenge is just being visibly happy. Marcus, Joel's colleague whose name had been stolen for the LLC, had actually apologized to me at a Sterling Capital networking event. Turned out he'd had no idea Joel was using his name for shady business dealings. We'd laughed about it over terrible conference wine. He'd asked me out. I'd politely declined. I was enjoying being single too much to complicate it with someone from Joel's orbit, even tangentially. But I'd started dating. Nothing serious. A software developer named Blake I'd met at a friend's barbecue. A lawyer named Ethan from my gym. Both nice guys. Both transparent about their lives. Both absolutely not maintaining secret families in neighboring cities. My standards had gone up. Significantly. Now when someone said they were working late, I didn't automatically trust them. I verified. When someone was vague about their weekend, I asked specific questions. Some people might call that trust issues. I called it pattern recognition. The house had become completely mine. I'd repainted the living room, replaced the couch Joel had picked out, even changed the artwork. Every trace of him was gone except for one thing. I'd kept a small photo from our wedding in the bottom drawer of my desk. Not because I missed him, but because I never wanted to forget what ignoring red flags looked like. He'd been distant for months before I'd hired Hank. He'd been secretive about his phone for over a year. He'd stopped asking about my day, stopped caring about my work, stopped being present in our marriage. I'd noticed all of it and explained it away. He's stressed. He's busy. He's going through something. Turns out he was going through something. Someone else's reproductive system. The lesson wasn't that all men are terrible. The lesson was that when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Don't wait for the hospital elevator reveal. Don't wait for the secret baby. Don't wait for the financial fraud. Trust your gut. Hire the investigator. Check the bank statements. Protect yourself first. Jennifer asked me once if I regretted the 6 years with Joel. I'd thought about it carefully before answering. I regret the last 18 months when I knew something was wrong and didn't act. But the first 4.5 years? Those taught me what I don't want. That's valuable too. Besides, the divorce had paid for my bathroom renovation, a trip to Italy, and a very nice contribution to my investment portfolio. Joel had essentially funded my liberation. There's poetry in that. I'd heard through Austin's surprisingly small professional network that Joel's career had stalled. Precision Analytics had passed him over for partner. Something about trust issues with a client, which was rich considering his trust issues had cost him a wife, a house, and most of his savings. Morgan's parents apparently had opinions about him too. Loud opinions. Frequently expressed opinions. Meanwhile, I was thriving. Professionally successful. Personally content. Financially secure. Living in a beautiful house in Austin with a renovated bathroom and 0 liars. Some people say living well is the best revenge. They're wrong. Living well while your ex lives in Pflugerville eating ramen and paying child support is the best revenge. Every time I walked into my marble bathroom, I thought about Joel in his 1-bedroom apartment with IKEA furniture, trying to explain to his son someday why Daddy doesn't live with Mommy and why Daddy's broke. And every single time, I smiled. Because at the end of the day, I didn't just survive the betrayal. I audited it, documented it, weaponized it, and walked away richer in every sense of the word. Never underestimate a financial analyst with a good attorney and 18 months of receipts. That's not revenge. That's just accounting.